Hi guys, Mark here for KetoKitchenCollection.com, and today's question is, alcohol in the keto diet, is alcohol allowed? Well, generally speaking, yes it is, but there's a few things we need to consider first. First of all, which alcohols are actually allowed. Secondly, how does our body react when we're in ketosis to drinking alcohol, and what are the dangers of drinking alcohol while in ketosis as opposed to drinking alcohol when we're not in ketosis. First of all, what you're probably most interested in, what alcohols are keto approved. The best alcohol you can have that has no carbohydrates in it when you're in ketosis is any kind of spirit or liquor. So whiskey, brandy, gin, tequila, vodka, those sorts of things. As long as they're straight and not flavored with anything or sweetened with anything, then you're good to go. If you do want to add a mixer to it, for example, if you want to put Coke with your whiskey, don't use the sugar-filled Coke. Use Coke Zero or Diet Coke and you'll be good to go. Next on the list is champagne or dry wines. Excuse the aircraft, please, guys. So champagne, for an average glass of champagne, you're going to get about 1 to 2 grams of carbohydrates. For an average glass of very dry red or white wine, you probably get about 2 to 3 grams of carbs. As soon as that wine starts to get a little bit sweeter or more fruity flavored, the amount of carbohydrates in it is going to start cranking up. So you want to avoid anything but very dry wines, okay? It shouldn't really matter if it's red or white. Just it's got to be very, very dry. Honestly, I wouldn't even touch wine if you can really help it. The champagne should be all right. But the best thing you can have is the spirits and liquors. Beer, no good, leave it alone. Wine coolers, no good, leave them alone. And cocktails, no good, leave them alone. With the beer, I have seen some very low or zero carbohydrate beers. I've never tried them, to be honest, so I can't give you any input one way or the other as to how good or bad they really are. What I would recommend you do is, they may have a nutrition label on, maybe not in the beer bottle, but on the container that the beer comes in. Like if it's I don't know what you call it, a case or a carton or a slab, depending on the country you're in. It may have a nutrition label. It may say it's got 0 carbohydrates in it, but look at the ingredients list, okay? That's where the really telling things are. What if it's got sugar alcohols in it to be able to sweeten it up? Those things will have a calorie content. They will give you an insulin spike, okay? So you never always know what you're getting by just because it says 0 carbohydrates on the front of the packet. Again, I've never tried them and never looked at them to know, to be able to give you definitive information one way or the other. If you're interested in finding out about that, let me know in the comments section. I'll definitely look that up for you. Stick with the spirits and the liquors. You can't go wrong. Now, there's a few other things we need to consider about drinking alcohol when we're in ketosis. Number one, our body, whether we're in ketosis or not, considers alcohol a poison. So any fat burning that you're doing will essentially stop while you've got alcohol in your system, so that alcohol can be metabolized and gotten rid of. Okay? So you're probably not going to have alcohol in your system all that consistently, especially when you're on a diet, but typically people don't. So I wouldn't be too concerned about stopping the fat loss while you've got alcohol in your system. Is just something to be aware of. Also, alcohol does have a calorie content. You're not going to be having a super high amount of alcohol even to get you drunk. It's not typically a huge amount. So while it's got a calorie content, from memory it's 7 calories per gram of alcohol. It's just something to be aware of. So while you're drinking alcohol, don't expect that you're going to be losing fat. It's not going to happen until your body clears it all out of your system. Now, the other thing that you need to keep in mind and be very aware of is that alcohol can cause an insulin spike. Well, not can cause, it does cause an insulin spike the same way that carbohydrates do. Now, I don't know how intense that insulin spike is. I haven't been able to find anything definitive on that. But the thing that you really need to be aware of and to take into account is that when you're in ketosis and you drink alcohol, you'll get drunk more quickly on less alcohol than you normally would. Okay, something to be very aware of. So when you start getting drunk, you tend to make decisions that aren't as good. You may end up drinking more than you anticipated or more than you planned, which will get you, of course, more drunk more quickly when you're in ketosis. I don't know the biological mechanics of why that is, but it happens. People give reports of it all the time, and you'll probably find it yourself. You'll get more drunk more quickly on less alcohol than you would if you weren't in ketosis. So why is this necessarily a problem? I guess that in itself is not a problem as such. It's just that if you go overboard with the alcohol and ketosis, you'll give yourself quite a good insulin spike. Why is that a problem? Okay, your body has low stable insulin levels and low and stable blood glucose levels, which is good. It's great. It's what ketosis does for you. It's one of the things that really helps you lose the body fat very effectively. Your body's running on ketones, except for a few small parts of your body that must run on glucose. Okay, and there's a part of your brain that must run on glucose. You get that from the trace carbs in the food that you eat through the day, and also your body has a process called gluconeogenesis, where it converts protein and amino acids into glucose so that those small parts of your brain and various other parts of your body can use the glucose they need. It does give you just a very, very small insulin secretion, and it keeps your blood glucose from dropping down to zero, which will not help you at all. It'll kill you. If you have alcohol, you're not having any carbohydrates to come in with the alcohol or through the food you're eating, so the alcohol will give you a good old insulin spike. Whatever glucose is in your bloodstream will get jammed into everywhere that will accept it, and your body will take glucose before it'll take ketones, so it'll suck it right up, and then you're left with extremely low blood glucose levels because you're not replenishing it with anything. There's nothing in the diet. Your body can only process amino acids through gluconeogenesis into carbohydrates so quickly. So all of a sudden you're left with extremely low blood glucose levels after the insulin spike comes back down, and it's not going to last up there for long. And what happens to those parts of your brain then that must run on glucose? There's no glucose, or not sufficient enough to really keep them functioning the way they need to. And this is a problem that diabetics can run into. Now, I'm not a diabetic, I'm not a doctor, I can't speak definitively on my experience with this because I haven't had this experience. I've only read about it in research papers, anecdotal evidence, and that sort of thing. But if people who have diabetes get their medication wrong, or their diet wrong, or perhaps the disease just reacts in a certain way to whatever their body's doing or whatever stimulus there is, they can have a situation where their blood glucose levels are too low, or that they're not getting glucose effectively enough to their brain, and they can go into a diabetic coma. Okay? That's effectively what you're pushing yourself towards if you have a huge amount of alcohol while you're in ketosis. Okay? Now, I'm not trying to scare you, and the chances are that you won't drop into a diabetic coma. So there's no need to get annoyed in the comments. There's no need to say that you're going to swear off alcohol forever while you're in ketosis. You don't have to do that. I'm just trying to educate you to know what the very, very unlikely worst case scenario is. How do I know that this is something that happens? Well, I haven't really experienced it myself. I'm not, when I'm in ketosis and trying to lose fat, I typically don't drink. But people that I've spoken to and that I've read about their experiences online have found that if they've overdone the alcohol, then they can get into a state where they'll be drunk, but it's also a feeling of being, I guess probably the best term is befuddled, I suppose, for want of a better terminology. Just where their decision making isn't good, slightly differently from just being drunk, where they don't feel like they've got it all together and they can't think straight. Now, if you do find that you get into that situation and it's not feeling drunk, it's something else, and you're just not feeling right in the head, it could be that you've got extremely low blood sugar and your brain and your body is just struggling with that. Stop drinking alcohol. Number 1, stop drinking alcohol. Number 2, start drinking water. Number 3, if you're really desperate, just go get yourself a can of regular full sugar Coke get yourself a slab of chocolate, get yourself a bottle of orange juice, whatever it might be, as long as it's got simple sugars in it, and just slam that sucker. Okay, as soon as you do, all those problems will stop and go away. It'll probably take minutes and you'll feel back to your normal self. Okay, now you will drop yourself out of ketosis at least for a short time, which is not the problem. You want to get yourself, safe in health terms. And if you do find you have to do that, just because you're out of ketosis for a short while, just go back to eating your keto meals. You'll be back in ketosis pretty quickly. If all you've had is, a Mars bar or a can of Coke or a bottle of orange juice, then it's not a big deal, So hopefully that helps you guys out to understand, just with regards to drinking alcohol and ketosis, go in with a game plan. If you normally drink 4 drinks in an evening, have 2. Plan to have only 2. If you normally drink 6, only have 3. If you normally have 10, only have 5. Okay, just until you see how your body reacts and you know what your body does in relation to alcohol and ketosis. So have your game plan, know how many you'll drink and limit yourself to that, and go in with people that will support you, that understand what you're doing, that know you're in ketosis, know you've got a limit on how many drinks you want to have, and that you're surrounded by people who also have your best interests at heart as well as their own, of course, and will keep an eye on you throughout the evening or whenever it is you're drinking. So what's your experience, guys? Have you ever had any of these experiences where you've overdone alcohol while you're in ketosis? Have you been drunk more quickly on less alcohol while you've been in ketosis? I'd like to hear from you. I want to know what your experience is. I think everyone else who's watching the video would also like to know what your experience is so that we can all learn from that. Thank you very much for watching the video through, guys. I'm Mark from KetoKitchenCollection.com, and I'll see you on the next one.